All right. Here we go.
This is the Misdirected Mark Podcast, a podcast about gaming, game mastering, and entertaining you, our listeners. We are explicit, you have been warned, and I'd like to thank Mike Willard for letting us use his music on our show. Now let's pick up those mics and get on with this thing.
So on this episode, we're going to talk about some free-range children this evening.
Chris, you mean kids on bikes?
Hey, you're both right. Listen, on TV tropes, like I ever go there, this genre is called free-range kids, but it's often in gaming we refer to those kinds of stories as kids on bikes.
Yeah, like E.T., Goonies, Stranger Things.
Yeah, stories where parents are useless.
And weird stuff happens, or weird situations, that help drive the story forward.
Mm-hmm. And before we define any more about our main topic, I'll say welcome to the 350th, yes, that's right, 350th episode of the Misdirected Mark podcast. Bob is sick this evening, but we'll be adventuring without him, and yet with him in our thoughts as we journey into the odd of the mostly early 80s. With that, my name is Chris.
My name is Phil.
I'm Camden.
And let's get right into it.
Can I just ask, you've never been to TV tropes?
Like once for about 5 minutes.
Like once?
Yeah,
what?
it's like legitimately, it's like Tetris. My brain is immune to it.
Oh man, I love TV tropes. I'm like, that's like what I love, TV tropes. I mean, that's where I learned all my tropey stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you're not the only one.
Yeah, I mean, we recommend it a lot. I was a little thrown off by never been there. Okay, that's fine.
That's fine. Do I have to leave now?
No,
Okay.
it's fine. I'm going to note that in your annual evaluation. Yeah.
Ken, we don't judge. Like, if you don't like TV tropes, it's fine. Like, just because Phil gets lost there for hours and hours, like, it happens.
Right. Yeah.
I do sometimes too. Like, it's interesting. Like, as a storytelling, like, go teach yourself a little bit about storytelling. Go to TV tropes and realize, like, oh yeah, tropes are like a thing that exists in the world, and they don't have to be bad. They're just there.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, I love trope. I mean, I love trope heavy settings. So. If I'm going to run something I'm not completely familiar with, I like to go and read up on my tropes.
That's fair.
All right, let's get into our one thing.
Do it.
Let's do one thing. So, Camden, tell me about your one thing.
So I have been reading a book called, listening to a book called Trail of Lightning by Rebecca Roanhorse. It is fantastic. So it's a Native American woman protagonist who is a post-apocalyptic monster hunter.
Ooh, that sounds awesome.
She is
sweet.
Oh, it is totally badass. She's got this clan power that turns her into a killing machine. It is absolutely fantastic, and even better, written by a woman of color who is actually Native American as well, from the Albuquerque area. Highly recommend it. Go out and do it. And bonus, if you listen to the audiobook, everything is the narrator clearly has a handle on the native pronunciation, so you actually get the subtleties of the pronunciation.
Oh, wow.
of the book.
That's fantastic.
That is fantastic. I love when stuff like that happens.
Yeah, me too. So how about you, Chris?
Oh, so I've been very ill. Like, I got really sick last week. But in there was a gathering here on Sunday for one of my roommate's 30th birthdays, and we played games. And this game that I played was called Groves that was acquired at Breakout. It is a wonderful board game, so Camden will probably dislike it.
Just because it's a board game, not because it's a wonderful one.
Correct, right? I mean, it has nothing to do with it being wonderful or not. Like, yeah. It's the genre. The game is you are building out these trees, like the roots of these trees that are called groves underneath. And it's a point salad game, and you're playing fairies, like fairy tokens, out of a bag as like your actions for that round, and then you go around placing them like workers, and then you get resources, and you're trying to accumulate victory points. And it's a fairly low victory point scoring game, but like it's I've never seen the worker placement bag building mechanic before.
That's an interesting combination of two mechanics.
Yeah. And it's also fascinating because like you can build these portals to play on other people's stuff. Like, you actually have to build a portal to like, and point it at their tree to put workers on their stuff.
So that's a little like Manhattan Project.
Yeah, a little bit.
Where you put the spies and take over their stuff.
The thing is, though, when you put your workers on their places, like, they keep them at the end of the round. And when you put them in the middle of this, it's called the Tree of Idyllis, it goes back into the supply. So you have to be very careful about how you play your...
So if you play on your card, you get to keep them.
Yep.
If you play them outward, they go somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. It's really fun to play. Like, I like games like that quite a bit. And the theme is great. I like the theme a lot because it's like you're playing fairies. Although there was this really like awkward thing where the people that we're playing with were like, oh yeah, those because there's a fairy for every season, and then there's the general fairies, and they were calling them the like utila fairies and the nondescript fairies. I'm like, that's not cool. Like that's not nice to the fairies at all. Like they work hard. They should be loved just as much as everybody else.
Yeah.
You said it's a point salad game.
Yeah.
Is there a ton of ways, or
I think there's after I played it 3 times, I think there's 4 different ways to score points. There's 6 different ways to score points, but there's really 4 different ways to score points in the game.
It's not terrible.
No, and it's manageable enough, and it plays in less than an hour, which is what I like.
One day we're going to build a trust tree for Camden to play a board game.
Or we could role play playing a board game and forget the board game altogether.
I mean, that's a role playing game I'm interested in. Like, can we build a role playing game that's about being a bunch of board gamers?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we could, but I'm not sure.
That's right.
Not sure that's going to come off the way you think it's going to.
Yeah, I mean, what's the arc of that game?
It ends in a table flip. That's all I know.
I mean, those are bad board games. End in table flip or diplomacy. Diplomacy is the other one that.
Yeah,
I don't really think there's. I mean, there's a board. There's not much of a board in diplomacy, though. It's really just about manipulating each other.
Well, diplomacy, there is a board because you move, like you have control of parts of it, but mostly you just write notes and screw each other over. Yeah.
Like I'm like, we're gonna do this deal, and then you don't do that deal, and then you
yeah.
make a deal with other
I'm
people
going to invade Poland
your
with
country.
you. I'm
yeah.
totally not invading Poland. Yeah.
I mean, it's fast. Now that you're talking about diplomacy, it's a fascinating game because it's asymmetrical, right? And it's all about social.
Yeah, the game's actually more role playing than it is board game.
Correct.
Because you actually
role playing the leader of a country.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Yep. And you are basically making deals with everybody, knowing what everybody's kind of like power base is at that point, with the goal of like taking over a good chunk of the world by the end of it.
But
so
you have to write your move like on a piece of paper, so you can't change it last minute. Like you do a round of whatever happens on the board, and then everybody goes and talks to each other and like cuts deals, and then everybody stops and they go back to like their pad of paper and they write the thing that they do and they hand them all in.
Yep. And then they reveal them.
Right. And then
then stuff happens, and then people get angry because like
Yes.
you told me you were going
Yes. Yeah. Like, you said you were going to invade Poland with me. I'm going to die out here if you didn't join me. Well, and I didn't.
Yeah, and you're
sorry,
dead.
I took the deal from Russia and
Yeah.
got food instead.
It is why people say that game makes people not friends anymore.
So,
But it's totally a role playing.
It requires a serious
In
level
board
of
game.
social contract.
Yeah, in board game format.
so it's like
We're not doing anything to reinforce Camden playing.
No, you're
Yeah.
not. So it's like Monopoly with a role play overlay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
that's
like
actually pretty
yeah.
accurate.
Yeah,
I've
with
never-
all the problems that are inherited by that construct.
I
Yes.
have never played diplomacy. I've always wanted to play it once, just so that I can more I can speak about
So
it.
you can speak about. To be honest, it's not a whole bunch of game, right? Like it is literally that. Like I forget the board part. Like there's some things that happen on the board, but the bulk of the game is like you all go sulking off in corners, like whispering to each other to make deals, and then you go back and write down your thing where you're like, totally not doing that.
There was a
Like,
comment in the chat room where Monopoly only sucks because people don't play it.
That's
rules as
correct.
written. I think Monopoly sucks because it's got player elimination.
That's the ultimate end goal. But I think the thing that people talk about is like how Monopoly never ends. But Monopoly does end if you actually play it correctly, because you're supposed to, if no one buys the property, you're supposed to auction it immediately.
You auction the property immediately.
Yeah.
Actually, Monopoly is not as bad of a game as everybody says it is. It's
Yep.
the most house ruled, non-hobby board game, and in
Well,
fact,
it's not even house ruled. It's the most mistaught,
that too.
right? Because somebody's uncle teaches you how to play it wrong, and then you just play it wrong forever. It's propagated like how bad like
Yeah.
Yeah.
But one of the games that I've seen somebody actually flip
Oh,
a
no,
board
that-
on, Monopoly.
Oh, my I'll tell a quick story. My son decided to play Monopoly. He came up one Christmas, like Christmas vacation, he came upstairs and he was like, I want to play Monopoly. And I'm like, I don't play Monopoly. But Florence does. And Florence plays like cutthroat Monopoly. So she's like, I'll play. So he played and he was up for a while, and then she bankrupted him, and the look on his face, like he was ready to flip that board. And I'm like, buddy, that is why you play Ticket to Ride. Like that right there is why you don't play Monopoly and you play Ticket to Ride. It's a much better game to lose at.
Monopoly is a highly antagonistic game.
Yeah. I like Ticket to Ride. That's if I was going to take anyone to play a non-cooperative board game, and play safely, it's Ticket to Ride.
Also,
Even my parents love Ticket to Ride.
Also, the orange properties are the best ones to buy because they're the most highly landed on ones because they're right
Probability.
7, 9, and 10 away from go to jail.
Probability.
I like to play pretend.
I mean, I like to play pretend.
All right,
too.
so later we're gonna role play a game about board game where I'm gonna make a fiasco. I'm gonna make a fiasco play set.
Oh man, I finished Pandemic Legacy.
Oh,
I'm not gonna say anything else about it. That's all. Phil, what's your one thing? Because I was only supposed to say one thing. I said like 3.
Yeah, I got into the whole thing about board games. My one thing. So I'm back on the wagon to be more healthy. I have actually had a whole talk with my therapist about it and kind of figured out like I had let things slide because I was getting super comfortable. Like all the other parts of my trash fire life had calmed down, and I was like, you know what I don't have to do is I don't have to actually eat well. And I didn't for a while, and I gained a bunch of weight, and I haven't been enjoying it. Plus, I had problems recovering last year from my arm, which killed a whole bunch of there was a whole bunch of sitting on a couch not doing anything. So anyway, bottom line, I was like, you know what, I need to get back on being healthy, and if you're me, the way you do that is you make a project out of it, because that's my superpower is to run projects. So I did. I made a project out of it, and I'm because I'm also a science nerd. It is all data driven. So I bought myself a new Fitbit. That was my birthday present to myself. I bought myself a new Fitbit that tracks steps and sleep and all of that. And I set myself some goals, like I should get 5 hours of sleep a night. And now I have data. And so the next part of that is actually make myself accountable by sharing that data out with people. So
Awesome.
I got back on the wagon for counting calories again and all of that stuff. So I'm not overdoing it. I gave myself 3, what I think are 3 reasonable goals, which is to track my calories 7 days a week. That doesn't necessarily mean I need to hit my calorie goals, but I am trying to hit them. But at least get in the habit of, if I record everything I eat, I tend to just eat better anyway, because I won't eat bad things when I see the calorie counts on them. Walk 5 times a week, weather permitting. So take a walk at lunchtime, and sleep 5 hours a night, because I was getting down to 4 and a couple times 3 hours and 45 minutes of sleep a night, and that's batshit crazy.
No bueno.
Yeah.
Hey,
Oh, I'm sorry. We'll talk about that. Anyway, it's no good.
it's no good.
Thank you. 3 hours and 45 minutes is super unhealthy. Even for me, that was like way too low. So I've been making myself like 5 hours of sleep, which my body actually doesn't mind. Like 6 is my max, so 5 is actually 5's not terrible. So anyway, I'm doing that, and we're going to talk about. I'm telling everyone because it'll be a thing I will probably talk about in future shows on the back end of the show, because part of being accountable is to tell someone, because it's easy if I don't tell anyone anything, I can just do what I want.
Do we want to do the healthy, not challenge, but the healthy roundup at some point?
We can, if other people want to join in, we can do like we did in previous years.
So one year we did a weight loss challenge, but where everybody
It wasn't
like
really a
reporting-
challenge.
It wasn't really a challenge. Like reporting like how you're doing with your weight loss and stuff like that. But it didn't quite work. It worked fairly well, but we want to do something that's a little bit more positive, like just like tell us about the healthy things you're doing, so that we can report all the healthy things that people in the community are doing.
Cool.
Yep.
Awesome.
We should do that again.
We should do that again. If people are interested, you should hit us up and let us know, because we could start kind of doing the roundup again, where people were putting in their.
Now we just need a place to do that, like a forum.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you're on Slack, you can certainly hit us up in Slack. But if you're not in Slack, like, you could hit us up on Twitter.
Yes.
Yeah.
Soon we'll have a forum. I've already seen the beginnings of that plan.
Nice. Cool. All right. That's my one. That's my one thing. It's been a couple days of healthy living. I don't have a problem with it, other than I'm dealing with the lack of control for not eating what I want. So I'm trying to buy stuff. I'm just not letting myself. So I'm having a real control issue. Like,
Yeah.
I'm working my way through it slowly.
Let's do some announcements. But before we get to the big thing that you're going to talk about,
Yeah.
we have a bag Thulu on the table on our Twitch stream,
Do-do.
and the dragon bag to the right.
That one's
Now-
Chris's.
Yes, that's mine.
Don't anyone get your eyes on that one.
So we have 3 bag Thulus from Wayward Masquerade, Bridget Hughes. We have 3 sets of dice that are dragon dice. They have little dragons on them, and we have 3 sets of Cthulhu dice, bag Thulu dice. We are going to be constructing a contest in the next week or two to actually give these away to folks, which will probably coincide with opening of our new forum, because that makes sense.
Oh, good.
So as soon as the forum's open, we'll have a contest up, and then we'll explain all the rules for that, and we're going to be giving these away to 3 of the listeners.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yes.
They're awesome. I already found out that members of the Misdirected Mark podcast and are not eligible, so I'm out.
Yeah, sorry. If you were a member of Misdirected Mark Productions, you are not eligible to win any of these things.
I'm just gonna have to order one from Bridget. Like, they're fantastic. I love them. So I have my little guy, which I keep forgetting to stick on my bag, but I got my little guy that I need to bring with me. Cool.
Awesome.
All right, want to do the next thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. We'll do a serious thing, and then we're going to do a little more jovial thing.
Sure.
So do the serious thing first. Last week we got an email sent to the MMP at misdirectedmark.com email account that from a listener who had some concerns about the language we used in the on the last show. So if you remember, the last show was ethical game design.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was 2 shows ago, but yeah.
Was it?
Yes, because last week was Breakout.
Oh, right.
Remember, we're like a week delayed.
Sorry.
That's
okay.
fine.
Anyway, specifically from that episode and the one before it, which was the positive community one.
Yes.
They were concerned about some ableist language that we were using. In fact, I just used it a few seconds ago, which was the word crazy, as well as some language that sounded misogynistic outside of the context it was intended, which doesn't actually justify it. We'll get into that in a second. But it was the only email we received about it. But we take these things very seriously. So we all got together. Bob, Camden, Chris, and I got together outside of our normal show hours, so it wasn't like a thing that we kind of jammed into, our setup evening. That was actually Camden's idea. It was really good. Like we just got together on a Sunday and sat and talked. So we did. We sat and talked about it, and we kind of went through, talked about the show, talked about things we said, things that could have been misconstrued that we said, etc. We have some improvements, right? Because talking about it's one thing, but having something actionable to do about it is actually more relevant. One of the phrases we used in there was we talked about having a diverse portfolio because we were talking about working with other designers. And honestly, it is actually a very poor choice of words. It winds up sounding like we're collecting designers. That like somehow we're collecting designers so we can check boxes off on a thing that we've worked with this person or whatever. What we really want to do, I mean, that's not our intention, and we talked about that on the show. So what we're going to do going forward is to refer to those interactions when we work with someone else as a partnership.
Yes.
And that was the thing we actually said on the show, right? Like but that is the thing that we will strive to make sure that we say. Anytime we are talking about a collaboration with another designer, it is a partnership. That is much more in line with our intent.
Yeah, and with what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
We're also going to work hard to eliminate ableist language by actively removing words like crazy, nuts, and insane from our dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
We will take the same approach as we did with shifting from the male-centric wordage, the patriarchal-centric wordage that we used to use to much more neutral language. So like from guys to folks, for example. I mean, there was that huge period of time where there was always that joke where I would say guys and I would say, I mean, girls, folks.
But I mean, it was the actual effort of you cycling. Like,
I mean, it was the intent. It became sort of a joke, but the intent was always to make it a better language choice.
Yeah.
And we won't make a joke out of it, of course, as much as, I mean, it didn't intended to be a joke before, but like, we'll try to make it as significant of a change and as smooth of a change as we can. It's going to take some time because changing your language is always difficult, but we're going to be doing that. And when we slip, like I did earlier, we'll call each other out.
No,
on it.
I slipped earlier.
No, when we slip, we will call each other out on it, like I did earlier.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yeah. I was the one who said it. Yes. With regards to the misogynistic sounding comments, we realized that we were taking for granted our close relationship with the members of the chat room. So we actually know almost everybody in the chat room personally.
Yes.
which is fine when we're talking to the chat room.
When we're with our friends, right? But
Right,
This
but-
is not us with our friends.
Right, but there's lots of people who are listening who aren't members of the chat room or that we haven't met personally, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
And so for outside listeners, like you're not going to get the context or inside jokes or anything like that. So things we say can come off like really poor sounding. And the other piece to this is the show's live. It's not scripted. It used to be more scripted, but we've actually now with Camden here, and now that we're 3 and usually 4 people on the show, we've stripped out all the scripting to the show. So we don't actually script anything, so we can't go back and edit and check words.
Except for this part.
Yeah, well, this part.
It's important, that's why.
And we don't edit this show. So we don't go through and edit and clean up the show after we record it, which is something we used to do years ago.
This is live radio.
Yeah, this is very live, which means that the onus is on all of us behind the mics to make sure that the language we're using can't be misconstrued.
Correct.
So we will do our best at that, and which means that we'll be a little less casual and a little more measured about the things we say so that we can work to avoid coming off the wrong way.
All right. So we understand that this is our job as hosts here to handle our own language and our own behavior going forward. But we've built a community. Certainly, I mean, I have the least to do with that as a recent addition to the show. But Bob, Chris, and Phil have built a community around them of really cool people that care. And when people care, it's like family. Often you want to give them a pass on the mistakes that they make. So what I would ask of, and I think what we're all asking of the community out there, if you feel the impulse to say something, feel free to follow through with it. It's a gift to all of us. It helps make the show better. It helps make the community stronger, and we would really, really appreciate it. So moving forward, if you are willing to do that, you have the energy and the desire, please, please, please know that it will be received with an open heart.
Yeah. So I think the bottom line is we really want to do better.
Yeah.
We want to do better. And, I'll say it. I grew up in the 80s. Like I've got all sorts of problematic language trapped in, idioms and things like that, especially when we start riffing and, ad-libbing on the mics pop out, just like that statement earlier. Right? Like that's the things we have to work at pulling back. So, okay. That is the serious thing. Talk about the jovial thing?
Sure. Hey, it's episode 350. That's a lot of episodes.
Yeah, it is.
That's 7 years, 350 episodes. I mean, that's not a lot of shows, not a lot of podcasts get to this point.
No.
Man,
you actually count them on your hand. There are only a handful that go this distance.
Seems like maybe 6 episodes is all we've been on for. Maybe 7.
That seems about right.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know. That's
mean,
just me,
for
maybe.
you,
This version of the show.
I now can think of at least 4 different places I've recorded this show.
So let me ad lib, see if I can go through the different eras of Misdirected Mark. So there was me and Mark for like the first 104 episodes, because that's when me and Mark stopped. And there was a fiction component to the show back then.
Oh boy.
Yeah, but some people liked that.
Some people liked it, but I was so bad at it. It
Yeah.
actually was better we stopped doing
So then it was me and Phil, and things got a little bit dark
it.
for the fiction side of it.
Oh, for the fiction. Yeah. Well,
Yeah, the show, the academic discussion. There's
the
a
scholarly discussion.
the scholarly discussion part of it actually got somewhat better.
Yeah, because
after that.
I mean the early ones with you and Mark were a lot of Mark being somewhat bombastic and ridiculous,
Yes.
and you being like the voice of reason.
Correct. Which then was funny because after you joined, I became the bombastic, and
Yes,
I don't know about ridiculous, but I had the stronger set
you
of
definitely
opinions.
did, right? I was the more measured, the more eccentric.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So then that lasted until we added Bob, because we needed help, because at that somewhere in there too, we were like, oh, we lost an episode. Remember, we recorded an episode,
yes.
then we lost an episode. So I'm like, well, we need a backup. So then we started streaming the show live because it created a backup,
Mhm.
and then that just kind of took off. That was around like 150. So we've been doing this live for like 4 years.
Yeah, the crazy part was so we blew up the show,
Uh-huh.
right? We lost that episode and we were like, we're not re-recording this episode.
Nope.
We're just not going back and doing it. So we were like, all right, fine. We'll record it live to YouTube. And then we were like, I don't know, what if we just told people we were recording it live? And like people showed up to it and we were like, oh, okay, like that's a thing. Like you actually want to sit here and watch us do this? So that was the beginning of it. So then we had to have a chat room, and then that got wildly out of hand. And then we were like, we need help with the chat room. And that is enter Bob at 167, who was like, I will come in and I will handle the chat room. So, yeah. So, yeah, that's that was the beginning.
Did we say the crazy part? One of us said the crazy part.
Did I? Oh, thank you.
I didn't even notice it.
That one's good. I'd be honest. This one will be a process for me.
Yeah, me too.
That is a phrase I am. That is a phrase I'm really comfortable using, and I don't even have a backup phrase for it, like we did when we shifted.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah. Oof. Okay. So yeah. No, it's okay. It's like I'm literally racking my brain, like how to say that again, like more properly. Wild. I like wild. Thank you.
Bizarre, wild.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Because wild is a word I can easily work in. Cool. All right, good. I can do that. Yep. Yeah, it got wildly out of hand. It was hard. Like it was hard. I'm doing it right now. I'm trying to manage the chat room and talk. It's hard.
It's hard.
That's why we needed Bob.
That's right.
Yeah.
Bob is a superpower.
Bob is pretty great.
Yeah. And then a whole bunch of episodes go by. Right, like there's like a fast forward of like all these episodes.
Well, so we did like 100 episodes of like game mastering advice, with sprinkled in some stuff about publishing and designing, because we had started doing that.
Right.
And then we're like, well, it's getting stale after two years of doing this. Like a couple of award nominations and things like that. Like the show did rather well for itself. And then we're like, well, we're kind of like running out of things to say. So then we started doing the exploratory plays.
Yep.
And then Camden moved to Buffalo, and we were like, hey, Camden, you should come hang out with us.
A game designer moved to Buffalo. It's like Halley's Comet, right? Like that's how many times a game designer has moved to Buffalo. There have been spontaneous game designers, right? Like game designers who like suddenly go from like, being a GM to I'm going to design a game, but so rarely has a designer moved into Buffalo.
Intentionally moved to Buffalo.
Yeah, I feel like we would have squandered an opportunity had we not immediately tried to recruit you for the show.
Yeah.
Right?
And so then that's where we are today. After 7 years. This is year 8.
Mm-hmm.
It's a long time.
And Camden's ready to play some gangbusters. Like we are going to get.
I am not ready to play gangbusters. That is a lie.
Oh
boy.
Man.
Gangbusters. No, we'll go play something else. I don't know. We are due an exploratory play. I don't think we've picked out a game and sat down and figured out who wants to learn a new game.
I'll just call out. We got halfway through a bracketed choosing process
and failed to finish all the way through. Yeah,
that's something that we could revisit.
Yeah, that's a good thing we should do. Oh,
some other solid words: unreal, bananas, unbelievable.
Yes,
those
everybody's being very helpful, and I thank you because I didn't have a good word. Oh my God, why are people suggesting we do riffs for an exploratory play? We don't have that kind of time. We're not that kind of podcast.
I didn't know bizarre was a clinical term. That's interesting.
Really?
I'll have to not use that then.
I like wild. I'm going to stick with wild. Wild is a word that wild's a word that I can easily work into my vocabulary. GURPS. Oh.
So there's riffs and GURPS in the chat room.
Oof.
That's come on.
I thought I was the only sadist around.
You all want Camden to actually be on the show, right? Like, because I think he might rebel if we decide to play those games
early on.
Seriously,
this is the gamer equivalent of being beat into a gang.
I know, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say like we could play like Wolf Spell. Like that sounds like that sounds like a game we could all get behind. Like not riffs. Like Hydra Hackers would be fine for exploratory play, except for the fact that we made it and then it's like some serious hard shilling. Like we would actually like to play other people's games. Like plus if we could. I mean, we probably still should just do that stuff. It is. I mean, some part of this show is about marketing our stuff. Oh, Cyberpunk 2020.
I mean,
that is
I
actually
don't
one I
do
would-
not want to lie about that. Like some part of the show is about marketing our stuff.
It is, but we have other ways where we
Yeah, I
we
mean,
have effective ways to do that without.
We're gonna do a whole episode on One Child's Heart.
Yeah.
What? We are?
Yes, we are.
That's wild.
Well, I mean,
To-
we're going
to be fair, it wasn't Camden's idea. It was our idea.
That will never be my idea.
No, I actually think it's I mean, I think it's super interesting to we have the opportunity to sit down and pepper you with a bunch of questions, and you will find when you get ready to do the Kickstarter junket that you will get asked a certain set of standard questions. So we're not asking you any of those.
Oh, okay.
We'll go deep dive.
No, I will go do my typical thing where I'm like, what is the most actually interesting question I can ask about the design of this game instead of asking you like, tell me about One Child's Heart.
Yeah. Chris is actually a really good interviewer.
Thank you, appreciate that.
That's you actually do your homework and actually come up with really good interview questions.
Okay,
so cool. So 7 years. Wow.
And exploratory play, which people apparently like still.
Yeah. All right. So
strangely enough, those are more work than they seem.
They're a lot more work than they seem.
Yeah.
Especially if it's a game. Especially if it's a game we haven't played in a while, like having to relearn a game.
It's especially it's a lot of work on the person who is running the game.
Yeah. Everyone else just shows up and plays. It's awesome.
I'm glad that you understand what my part of this experience is going to be.
I mean, I would actually not be opposed. We can put Cyberpunk 2020 on the list. I would actually relearn Cyberpunk 2020. The mechanics of that game are not that complicated, and we won't do the Matrix stuff.
But we should, to show off how bad it
is. No, I could go on a whole rant about the problem with the Matrix thing isn't actually the Matrix stuff. The problem with it is how it's integrated into the rest of the game.
That's fair.
And part of that is mechanical, and part of that is the genre. The genre has done a disservice to, I think we talked about this on Pandas, actually. The genre has done a disservice to how that mechanic gets used in games. Anyway,
I suppose
we should move on.
Yeah, let's move on.
That's not the topic for tonight.
Are you ready for
Not
workshop?
even close.
Oh, I don't know. Does Kim want to do it with me? You want to do a duet?
Okay, let's do it.
All right, here we go.
Yeah, here we go.
I got you. Here goes.
Workshop! Kids on bikes riding around, solving mysteries! Workshop! I got our jumps! We're riding jumps on our bikes!
There we go.
That was kind of awesome.
Duet.
How metal was that?
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever think you'd get metal on a role-playing game podcast?
I mean, yes. I mean, I did because, that is my inner child.
That's fair.
My inner metalhead, complete with mullet.
All right, so after the last two episodes, we thought we'd do something a little bit lighter and discuss a genre that we like. And this will probably go better than the Kung Fu episode, I think.
I feel like I have something I can actually say here. I don't think we're going to spin off another podcast as a reaction to how bad we did on an episode.
You mean like Zhang Yu Hustle?
Yeah.
Zhang Yu Hustle.
Hey, listen, I will say this. If that shitty episode of our review of Kung Fu led to the creation of Zhang Hu Hustle, I feel like we did okay.
Yeah,
like
you're probably right.
Sometimes something has to be so bad that like people rise up against it, and like that is what happened, and I'm happier for it.
So we picked Kids on Bikes.
Yeah, we go. Kids on Bikes. I like that.
And we're going to talk about what the genre is, a bunch of the source material and inspirations for the Kids on Bikes genre, major tropes surrounding it, and jamming advice for this game. So, Definition Panda, tell me about the genre of Kids on Bikes, which actually isn't a genre on TV tropes.
It's not called Kids on Bikes, and the closest one to it doesn't actually encompass everything. So, Kids on Bikes as a genre is a genre based on a group of preteens or tweens who have some amount of mobility and autonomy, who, independent of any kind of adult authority, solve problems both mundane and supernatural.
Okay, so breaking that down, you've got kids, not adults, lacking the resources that an adult has, including credibility, and we'll get more into that as it goes on.
And they are also mobile and autonomous, which means that they can roam around an area without parental supervision, and in fact, to the point where parents often stay out of their way.
Yep. They solve problems, right? The crux of the Kids on Bikes genre is usually about solving a thing.
Yeah, and so there's both mundane and supernatural often. And so depending on the story, the cause of the problem could be something as simple as a crime, or it can be something like a fantastic, like a monster or an alien or some sort of giant pirate ship underground.
Yeah. Super good reference right there.
Yep.
So now that we've done the definition part and the only really scripted part of the episode,
Yeah.
there's going to be 4 questions, and I'm sure there'll be some amount of discussion that goes along
I'm
with them.
sure there will be.
Do you want me to ask first?
Yeah.
So, Camden, what are your favorite source material inspirations for the Kids on Bike genre?
Okay, so I'm going deep cut 80s. So I'm doing both mundane and the kind of fantastical. So first one, Adventures in Babysitting.
Hang on. Nobody gets off the stage until they sing the blues.
So Elizabeth Shue back in the day, going on ridiculous adventures. Once again, things that could have been simply solved by talking to an adult, but
Right.
in fact went off the rails. And of course, everyone's favorite, except for Kate, E.T.
Except for Kate?
Mm-hmm.
All right, I don't want to call Kate out, but maybe in the after show we'll ask for, or I'll just
I'm
text
curious.
her. I'm curious about why not
Yeah.
ET, but that's okay.
I'm just curious, yeah.
So how about you, Phil?
So I picked 2 as well. My first one is Stranger Things,
Mm-hmm.
which I just love. Like, I've watched both seasons. I love it. My other one has an asterisk next to it because I think it is. I think it's a great representation of the genre, and I think it's got some problems attached to it. Is Goonies?
Mm-hmm.
I think it is a quintessential kids on bike style movie, but I also think the portrayal of some of the characters, specifically Data, is pretty problematic. It will not hold water in today's standards. But that said, I saw it when I was like in 6th grade, and I loved it. Right, like it was definitely a thing when I was a kid. Chris, how about you?
I'm with you on the Goonies bandwagon. Like it is, to me, one of the quintessential kids on bikes films that ever existed. Also, I really love Stand By Me.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because I don't think there's a single bike in that movie, if I remember correctly.
They walk a lot.
Yeah,
they walk everywhere.
lot.
Yeah. But man, this is a really good cast too.
Yeah, but I mean, they solved the problem, and
It's a journey movie too. It's very interesting.
Yeah, and that one's I think a lot more about personal journeys, relationships.
Yeah. So your Adventures in Babysitting, that's so good.
Oh my god, I love. I've seen that movie more times. I used to get it from the videotape rental place. Like I used to. Not Blockbuster, because my town was so small we didn't have one of those. There was literally like a place next door to my house that was like a repurposed used car lot or something that became a video store, because that was like the 80s and everyone opened a video store.
Oh yeah, a Video City in
Yeah,
Alaska.
yeah.
That's where we went.
Yeah.
So all 3 of us have the same 2 games.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because they're the only 2 games I've ever played that
so
are in the genre.
Yeah, so let me run down the other, because Rob did us a solid and actually came up with a bunch more games.
Thank you, Rob.
But as it turns out, we've only played a couple of these. So I'll save the first 2 because those are the 2 we're actually going to talk about. Home by Dark, I think is Home by Dark is a kids on bike game. Little Fears, Jinkies, I think will fall into that category. Bubble Gumshoe. Monsters and Other Childish Things might be on the borderline because it involves kids but with their monsters, but it might also, I think it has enough of the other parts of it to qualify as well. So
can I will actually say that I played in, my friend Tracy Sizemore runs a sort of a teen murder mystery, and it's using Fate.
Oh, okay.
And managed to actually very much hit that kind of kids on bikes. This could all be solved if we just talk to an adult, but we are going, in over our head kind of a deal.
Are we talking like, is it in the same vein as like the Nancy Drew Hardy Boy type stuff?
Yeah, I would say very much.
I love those kinds of
I'm
stories
surprised
myself.
in your source material you didn't name the Nancy Drew Hardy
Everybody
book.
went movies.
Yeah.
So I went movies too instead of going. You said Stranger Things for a TV show, but yeah, like Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys. It didn't even occur to me that those were kids on. Well, there's a thing going on out there.
Apparently it's muscle car night.
I know, right?
Out on your street.
Because I read, I think the first 100 Hardy Boy books, like because they're numbered. Like so, I read the first 100 of them when I was a kid.
You know what? I will say, if we're talking about other media, Power Pack.
Yeah.
The Marvel comic is essentially Super's version of Kids on Bikes.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're all kids.
I don't even know what that comic is.
Oh, you know Power Pack?
Yeah.
Power Pack is a 1980s Marvel comic about 4 kids who get powers from this. I think it's from this alien ship or something. One of them has gravity control, and one of them like makes these. The little girl made light, like these balls of energy. They weirdly, for some reason, team up with Wolverine from time to time.
I mean, because you just put Wolverine in a comic book because you put Wolverine in a comic book.
Yeah.
I actually learned a thing about Wolverine where they just put him in everything because he was getting a huge push for like a decade. Like legitimately, the Marvel people just kept putting Wolverine in everything because he was supposed to be a throwaway character in a Hulk book.
Yeah.
It's his first appearance.
Yeah, he wound up. Well, he winds up becoming fiercely popular. 2, ushers the gateway into the kind of Steel Age anti-hero kind of thing. But yeah, so Power Pack was weirdly the remnants of Power Pack is that the one kid, the oldest one, the one who had gravity control. At some point, they all swapped their powers, but the one who had gravity control winds up going to Reed Richards and studies under Reed Richards in Future Foundation. Anyway, we are way off course. But anyway,
so New Mutants.
You know, when we talk about the genre and the pieces, we can discuss whether New Mutants falls in there or not. I mean, technically, they're young, they're teenish, they're on their own. And honestly, if they sometimes had talked to Professor X or the X-Men, would they have, circumvented their problems? Probably.
Yeah, I think in that Harry Potter kind of a way.
They're a little more together. Like Power Pack are actual little kids.
Oh, okay.
Like the New Mutants are like teens, like Power Pack's even younger than they are.
Because the Runaways, I feel, doesn't fit inside of it because it's because their parents are the antagonists.
Yes,
and their parents are very competent for the most part.
Yes,
and that's very different from what the
and their parents are actually opposing them.
Yeah, that they're the parents of the antagonists. So
so I don't think they actually fall in.
It's I mean, you could stretch it if you just remove that. I suppose if you remove that idea,
you would get a lot closer.
You have a slightly subverted version of a Kids on Bike story with the Runaways.
Yep. So, yes, and Power Pack used to hang with Franklin Richards. Yep, that is true.
Which is pretty cool.
Yes.
Franklin Richards is the most powerful mutant.
Well, Franklin Richards with all the brain blocks in his head, so he can't, warp reality at a thought. He gets those taken out.
Oh, let's take a break real quick, and then we'll get back into it.
We didn't actually talk about what games we've actually played.
Oh yeah, we should do that first.
Let's finish that off. We only talked about a list of other games. We didn't actually talk about the 2 biggest ones in the genre.
Yes, which is Tales from the Loop and Kids on Bikes.
Yeah. So I think I've actually all played them. What are your general impressions of both of those games?
So yeah, I'll go first since I've probably played them the least. I've played 2 sessions of Tales and I've played 2 sessions of Kids on Bikes. So I've played 4 sessions total. I'm pretty sure both of you have played campaigns of one of these games or both of these games. So I don't know. I think they work pretty well. Like the mechanics of Tales from the Loop and the setting from Tales from the Loop are very like is the perfect situation for a Kids on Bikes story. Like as long as you adhere to those tropes and also the mechanics, or at least the advice in the game from Tales from the Loop actually tells you to not. The parents don't do things. Like, do not let the parents help.
It's actually a principle of the game. There are 6 principles of the game, and one of them is that parents are basically useless.
Yeah, when you as soon as you put that in the game, then you've like pushed a good chunk of what the genre is all about, in my opinion. Although Tales does a really good job of making it about the thing that they're dealing with also like whatever the situation is that they're dealing with that's supernatural in this case, compared to, and then going back and forth between that and dealing with like at-home problems.
Yes,
like the game's core loop of play does that in a very efficient way.
Yeah, it's actually structured right into the game.
So I think that's good. The Kids on Bikes game, like there's the mechanic in there that is just brilliant is the powered character if you're using the powered character, because everybody gets to play the powered character, different aspects of the powered character. So if you want to play Stranger Things and you want to have 11, it works exceptionally well. There are things about that game that I don't like mechanically and how it works, but that mechanic is brilliant, and I hope I see it in other things.
Yeah, I agree. So, I played in my dear friend Quincy's Tales from the Loop game, which Sendo was also a part of. I think one of the things that shocked me the most about that game is the dice mechanic, to me, at least in my experience, is surprisingly brutal. But since you pull out the fear of death you're always kind of failing forward. And then it forces you, like you said, Chris, into those moments where you have to reconnect with these important people in your life and kind of role play those scenes out, which is great. And Kids on Bikes, I've been playing with Glenn, and it's good. It's a very different experience, different type of game, but it's nice.
I like the way Glenn runs Kids on Bikes. We have talked about it before. I have a couple of mechanical issues about the dice mechanic in that game. That few minor fixes, I think, actually tune that game up to where I would be more comfortable with it. I think Chris and I picked it apart one night. Like I read it and I was like, I'm like, I don't know how this mechanic's actually going to work at the table. And then when we played it, I was like, oh no, that's exactly how I thought it was going to play. Like it doesn't do a thing for me, and I don't remember specifically what it is, but I do remember that there was like a minor house rule that would have put it back in a place where I would have been a lot more comfortable.
It needs a second edition.
Yeah, there's just a little. Tales, on the other hand, Tales actually ran an 8-month campaign of Tales, so I feel pretty comfortable with the rules of that game, and I will echo everything that you said. It has this, like Bob will tell you, that system frustrates the shit out of him because it is harder to roll a 6 than you think it is.
Yes, it is.
Even when you have 7 dice. But the thing that game does really well is that you can push yourself. There's actually like 4 or 5 different routes to get a success in that game. But one of those routes, you take on conditions, and the only way to get rid of conditions is to go have a dramatic moment with your anchor character. So it's really good in that, like, yes, you can succeed forward, you will succeed at a cost, and it will drive you into dramatic scenes in the in-between. And it's great. Like, I can't say how much in play, how great that system works. Like, you have this really hard mystery, and these characters come back and they are all battered and scared, and like, they have all these emotional tags hanging off of them. And we always would end our sessions with a round of the anchor scenes. Even though it was like, oh, the mystery's over, technically we could just cut to that. We always did the anchor scenes, and the anchor scenes were always some of the best role playing. Just the kids kind of talking about what happened, and to what Chris had said, the parents being clueless, like the adults being clueless about it. That was always a thing in my game, that no matter what the kids told to the adults always took it as a metaphor. Like, there was one where Tony's character was just like going on and on about how like this horrible thing that happened, and like his anchor, which is was a farmhand on the farm that he worked on. She looks at him and she's like, that's capitalism. Right, like she pats him on the head. She's like, "That's capitalism. Like, here's your chocolate milk." Right, like they had a good discussion as well. But anytime he like would try to say what was happening, like the adults just can't hear that. Right, like they're just like, "Oh, that you're adorable." Like,
what an amazing imagination.
Yeah, and I will say, because we've talked about Tales before, that the setting for that game is so much my jam. I love that game. Like, I have a serious love for Tales. Like, I will run it straight out of the rules, straight from that setting, using the Swiss setting. I don't even have to transport it to the Nevada one. Like, I'm good. Although I have toyed with the idea. The supplement teaches you how to do it for your own city. Like, you can put the loot that shows you how to set up the loot for your own city. So I would totally do that as well. Like, I think it would be fun to do that. Anyway, I had much love for Tales. Now we can go to commercial.
All right, let's take a break. And we're going to commercial.
Yeah.
Let's talk about another show on the Misdirected Mark Network. Zhang Yu Hustle. Trade alongside fellow students Eric Farmer and Eli Kurtz in Zhang Yu Hustle. Eric and Eli make their Kung Fu Strong relaxing wuxia films, then discussing how to apply their observations to game design. In fact, they just came out with episode 22. I think they talked about Dragon.
Nice.
Which is, by all accounts, from what I saw from them on Twitter, I haven't had a chance to listen to it yet. I'll probably listen to it tonight. It's an excellent movie.
Awesome.
Cool.
Blake Ryan Batman wanted to know, is War Games a Kids on Bike? So there's not so many kids in that one, but yeah, no one actually listens to Matthew Broderick.
I mean, they're young.
He has to go solve not to have nuclear war. Like, when we break down the genre in a second and talk about some of the tropes, I would say yes. I actually think it falls in pretty closer. Like,
then I'm putting that on my list.
I
love that movie.
Oh, War Games is fantastic. Great. I love War Games.
It's a wonderful movie.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good one. Oh, I will be honest. Ange is saying that the Swedish setting, because she can't pronounce most of the names of places. I don't know how great of a job I did. Glenn had some background knowledge for pronouncing some of those and helped us along the way. And sometimes I just kind of put them in Google and listen to them. I don't know if I did a great job on them, but I don't know. I like that. I like the setting because it's the islands and stuff like that. Like it's islands and forest and stuff and not desert. Like I grew up someplace, with trees and stuff. So I don't know. It hits me. It works for me more than I don't have any good frame of reference for portrayed deserts.
Yeah.
I know it's empty, right? Like
Was there anything else in the chat room that we wanted to talk about?
Well, I'm also doing a shitty job of watching. So
I've been watching too.
Oh, good. I'm trying.
I didn't notice anything.
I miss Bob.
It's so hard. It's so much work.
I miss
That's
Bob.
okay.
Hard.
That's why I've been doing it too.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's go to the next thing then. So, what are the major tropes from this genre, Camden?
All right. So I think one of the things is there needs to be a real imbalance of power between the kids and what the problems are. So it can't be, kids handling kid problems like, Billy stole my baseball. It needs to be like, hey, we're 4 11-year-olds and we need to solve a murder, or, the nuclear power plant is about to explode and we're the only ones that we think can prevent a meltdown.
We found this robot that can turn it off.
Yeah, right, there needs to be a real, it needs to be like improbable, the imbalance between the problem that they need to solve and their actual, what would be expected of an average child.
Like there's a computer ramping up to start global thermal nuclear war.
Exactly right.
Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely.
So how about you, Chris? What major tropes?
So the one for me is that it's almost always the late 70s or the early 80s. And there's a reason for that because it was after that period of time that a lot of people started getting paranoid about their kids getting snatched.
Do you know the history for this?
I know that there was a bunch of no, I actually don't know why it popped up.
So there's a very famous crime that occurred in California, the abduction and murder of a child named Adam Walsh. So it was a huge deal, and what it ultimately led to was Adam's father is the guy who founded America's Most Wanted.
Oh, okay.
Right, there was a thing, like I remember this too, like my parents got super paranoid about letting us wander around after a certain point in the 80s, and it had a lot to do. Adam was at a mall. This guy abducted him, took him from the mall, murdered him, like left him in a ditch kind of thing. But it was a huge media event.
Yeah, but that flip, like before that, it makes it palpable to believe that these kids can just kind of wander around. Because after that, it doesn't feel like it's actually a thing that would happen.
Yeah, Ange is also mentioning Florida. Florida there was also a serial killer in Florida in the early 80s as well. That was
snatching kids.
Yeah, there were a couple of those, but they all kind of they cluster around a certain time period, and that was
the flip. Like, oh, it's not nearly as safe of a world as we thought.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, Adam Walsh was from Florida, Hollywood, Florida. Huh. I always thought he was from California.
Huh. Okay.
All right.
Was that Ange?
Yeah, that's Ange. Thanks, Ange.
Ange knows tons about crime. Like, if you ever want to know,
that's true.
If you ever want to know anything about crime, look for Ange and just ask her. She's probably
like true crime.
Yeah,
there we go. Thanks, Ange.
Yeah, she'll probably tell you all sorts of amazing.
I blindly accept
things.
whatever Ange tells me because she has way more knowledge on the subject.
And we need to pull Ange into our
police procedural game.
Oh, that would be awesome.
And Schmitty, by the way, Schmitty is a huge police procedural fan as well. So our team our team's forming. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
The other one is that there's often there is a special character, but not always. So there's some sort of mythical or mystic element to what's going on, or even like out of way over the top element compared to what is actually going on.
I think that's actually pretty solid. I could run through a bunch of them. I mean, E.T., right, without a doubt.
I mean, Sloth and Goonies.
And Goonies. Thor in Adventures in Babysitting.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The Whopper in War Games.
Yeah. Yep.
Whopper is
is a very interesting. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously 11 in Stranger Things.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, Stranger Things is so Stranger Things has the it's built on all of those movies, right?
Yeah.
So it's built on the knowledge of all those movies that came before it. A lot of the other movies we're talking about all kind of cropped up within a handful of years of one another, where Stranger Things very much studied this genre. So yes, 11 is a perfect example of the powered character.
No, of course, not every one of these stories has that though. Like the Stand By Me doesn't have it. The Nancy Drew Hardy Boy stories don't have that stuff.
Yeah. If the thing was going to be supernatural.
Yeah.
Right. Because that's not always
Well, the Whopper computer is not supernatural, but it is exceptional.
Is it?
It is
It is actually
For the 80s,
supernatural.
It is for
Yeah.
the 80s.
There's
yeah.
no 80s computer that did. There's no 80s computer that did that shit.
Yeah, there's no
No.
80s AI computer.
There's no
It's true.
computer today that really actually does that. Like, so, yeah. So
I don't know, man. Google seems to always know what I want to be looking at, or what I've recently been talking about.
I don't think it's too hard to figure out what you've been looking at.
Oh
No.
No. Actually-
wait, that's me. Sorry, that was projection. Never mind.
As total side note, but
Yes.
on I was just listening on NPR that McDonald's bought a company that specializes in AI, so that they could help create a smart computer that was predictive about what you would want to order in a drive-through, so that they could sell you more, and then ultimately transition that to their mobile app as well. So. Unfortunately, it's not running our military; it's running our fast food restaurants.
That's about the most cyberpunk thing I've ever heard, right?
Yeah.
Like that's where the AI technology, not into better killing machines. No. In order to sell more burgers, because that's exactly what cyberpunk McDonald's would do.
$300 million.
Question for you:
Yeah.
Ready Player One, Kids on Bikes movie? They are free range in the Oasis.
That's true.
Maybe.
I think they have all the resources that they need. I mean, because they're pretty autonomous.
Oh yeah, that's true. They're also competent.
And anyone
Yeah.
would actually listen to them. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, they weren't
People
being
wanted,
ignored.
You're right. People
Yeah.
wanted them to actually come work for them, so
Yeah.
they were highly sought after. Never mind.
Yeah.
Never
No,
mind.
it's worth.
Yeah, it was a good
I
question.
mean, it's worth asking because it's. I mean, these things kind of, like, is it a sci-fi story about kids or a mystery story about kids, or is it a kids on bike genre? Right, like the line cuts kind of close on those.
You can of course, like somebody asked about Harry Potter earlier.
Right. Somebody asked about hackers, and I would say the problem with hackers is that they're probably on the oldish side, but it's pretty close, right?
Yeah.
So the imbalance of power, right? Like it's a bunch of high school kids trying to stop a major crime, right? No one wants to listen to them, right? The Secret Service wants nothing to do with listening to them. They are actually pretty well. So let me get to my trope. Free range kids, which is what Chris said, which is the idea that kids are able to travel around whatever area they're in without any adult supervision or monitoring, right? Like they can just ride their bikes across town. What was it, 10 miles? Or ride their bike across across town. So yeah, hackers might kind of be a kids on bikes game. Kids on rollerblades.
Yeah, kids on rollerblades.
Or teens on rollerblades. That's the
there is-
90s version of it.
Oh,
Teens on
man.
rollerblades.
And
Somebody should
there
make
really
that.
is
Oh
that
my God, I wanna
huge
do-
imbalance of power because they've got floppy disks and they're trying
Yeah,
to
they're
stop,
hacking the
you know.
Gibson.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're hacking the Gibson
Yeah.
with floppy disks. I mean, nobody wants to see that. And floppy disks that they leave in really, really
Behind the condom machine,
insensitive
With gum.
you
They
know,
stick it with gum.
gum and dust I mean, that's
Senda,
terrible.
aren't you happy you've now seen Hackers now that we've gotten into this? Is that
Oh man.
yeah, so Hackers kind of actually fits this.
Teens on bikes or teens on rollerblades.
Well, because and kids on bikes, there's another genre in the book that's dads on mowers. Easily could be kids on rollerblades.
Mm-hmm.
I like the idea of dads on mowers, except for the fact that I just like what I really want is it's dads on mowers solving crime, but secretly like they're all having sex with each other. Like it's like a whole down low thing. It's like a suburbia thing. Like none of them talk about it, but like they're all hooking up.
I'm into that. That's cool.
Yeah.
There you go.
Maybe that's just
I
personal
mean, you
fantasy.
have your two like phases of play too, like procedural mystery,
Yeah.
interpersonal romance.
Yeah.
Works perfect.
Under the guise of that they're all in this like incredibly Like they're under pressure to conform to being like very suburban,
Yeah.
normal kind of. But they're-
I like so for me, my mind obviously just like one dad pulling up on the riding mower to another, like, "Hey Malik, what's up?"
yeah, exactly. Right,
like,
right. Like,
I just that makes me happy.
yeah. Like they both give them like they both give this like nodding look, like,
Uh-huh.
yeah,
Who's-
exactly.
Who's Dade? That's an iconic character who is extra.
Dade is from Dade is from Hackers.
Who is Dade?
Dade Murphy.
I can't remember which character.
He's Johnny. What's his face?
Oh, is he Ice Cool or Zero Cool or
Zero
whatever?
Cool.
Yeah, okay.
Crash Override.
Crash Override.
Crash 1170.
Sorry, he's Johnny Lee Miller to me.
Johnny
I
Lee
forgot
Miller.
that was his character's name.
You know what? He's a very young Johnny Lee Miller in that. Like I'm used to Sherlock. Johnny Lee Miller. Like when you see him in Hackers, you're like, wow, he is a child. Like,
Here, let me ask this question that just popped up in the chat room.
Sure.
And we have time for that, right?
as much time as you like.
How
Yeah.
important to the Kids on Bikes genre is the setting being closest to reality, unlike Harry Potter, Spy Kids, Magic Faraway Tree?
I think it's somewhat important. I don't know if it's super critical.
I don't know that the genre being super realistic is important so much as that that adult child relationship piece that needs to. I
I
think
think that's important.
that's important, and that's kind of what one of the cornerstones of it. And so having that follow through,
I think also letting the kids being able to just be autonomous is also
Mhm.
very important to that. Otherwise, they can't actually act.
Yeah, because if the adults swoop in and solve the problem, or the
Mhm.
adults are part of the solution, like have been part of the solution all the way, it's not really Kids on Bikes.
No.
I think those two pieces together are what are the primary motivating factors of the genre.
So I mean, I think that it can be like Adventures in Babysitting is super mundane,
Mhm.
but something like Harry, I like one of the suggestions or mentioned. Spy Kids is completely over the top,
Mhm.
but I think that they both kind of hit home in that
Hmm.
same way.
I
Except
would agree.
Spy Kids has a little bit more direct parent involvement, but they always end up getting pulled out of the picture. So.
Right.
Yeah, because they usually end up getting kidnapped or taken or
Mhm.
something like that, right?
Yeah, the other trope that I was going to mention, because I mentioned free range kids, which free range kids only works when parents aren't paranoid about their kids getting kidnapped. Right.
Mhm.
That's what Chris was alluding to, is
Yeah.
that the 70s and 80s work for free range kids, because in the 70s and 80s, before that paranoia kicked in about your kid getting kidnapped, you did just like. As a kid, I just did wander out in the wilderness during the summer, like left in the morning, came home sundown. There were no phones. There was no calling me to like get me to come back. It just by sundown be home. Like that was the rule when I was a kid. The other one that we were talking about is parents don't understand,
Mhm.
right? Like that's part of it. If you can just go to the parent and say, this supercomputer is going to start World War III, and the parents like, good on telling me, I'll go make a phone call and get
That's
this
right.
fixed. That's not Kids on Bikes.
So is it that the parents don't understand or the parents are just ineffectual at handling the situation?
It can be either one. Like the parent can't solve the problem.
Yeah.
It has to fall back to the kids. That goes back to Camden's thing of
With Spy Kids, right?
yeah. I actually have never seen Spy Kids, so I do like the parents are spies as well, though, right?
Yeah, but they get removed from the situation, so they
perfect.
can't.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's actually why I asked the question.
Yeah, then it works. Then it works a lot better. But yeah, it is that thing where they can't help. And in Tales, they actually just put that in as a principle of the game, because they just tell you like kids can't go running home and tell their parents. No one will believe them.
Mhm.
Adults are never going to believe what they say.
Yeah.
Right.
Is a good question with a good answer. It was where's the border between Kids on Bikes and coming of age stories? And then the answer from Ange was most Kids on Bike stories are coming of age stories, but not all coming of age stories are Kids on Bike stories.
Fingers and thumbs. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that is another part of the story, right? Like the early young love relationships between friends, like
Mhm.
camaraderie, like actual meaningful friendships.
Yeah.
Like Goonies has a whole bunch of that at the end. Like
Mhm.
they all kind of like bond together, even more than they were. They like in Goonies, even more so in Stand By Me. Stand By Me is very much about those connections between friends.
Yeah, the interesting thing about Kids on Bikes stories is that they can mesh with a lot of different kinds of things. right? Like they can be sci-fi, they can be fantasy, they can be fantastical. I think they have a lot of. I think an important thing for them is they have to have a lot of wonder. I think wonder is an important part of capturing the tone. I can't think of a Kids on Bikes story that doesn't have some amount of wonder in it.
Even if that's mystery.
Yeah, I mean, like there's Stand By Me, like there's the wonder of like we're gonna go find this dead kid in the forest. Like that's
the
I mean,
dead body it's morbid. But
yeah, it's morbid, but there's like sort of a what's the like I said, it's a not whimsy. Whimsy's the wrong word.
Wonder. I
Wonder
think
is,
I think wonder is a good word for it.
Yeah.
Oh, Bob wanted to know the finger and thumbs reference. Not every coming of age story is a Kids on Bike story, but there are many Kids on Bike stories that can be coming of age stories.
I think we still have another question to get to. Or are we going to talk about other tropes?
I listed a couple of other tropes. I mean, I think we hit free range kids. Parents don't understand. We talked about friendships, early love. The other one I like is if it wasn't for those meddling kids, right? Like that.
Scooby Dooby Doo.
Well, I mean, Scooby Doo, right?
You?
Like, except that it's hard to peg how old they are. Like in the cartoon, like
because they act like they're 7, but they look like they're 22.
Right. It looks like Fred could buy beer, but at the same time, like, no, I don't. Fred can drive.
Yeah, that's right.
He looks like he can buy beer.
But he talks to a Great Dane, so
that's. Yeah.
Sorry, did I step on your line?
No, not at all.
Wait.
No.
What was the thing?
You caught me like, no, you're right. There is some level of ridiculousness there because they're talking to a dog.
What was the thing we were gonna do? Oh, I know what it was. It was Scooby Thulu, which was the story was like they had actually encountered something like dark and evil, and afterwards like none of them are okay. Like they stopped solving mysteries. Like they basically solved like some Cthulhian horror, and then they like go their separate ways, and it's a one last job. Like they have to come back together one more time, but
that's fantastic.
But like they're all scarred from whatever happened, and Scooby's gone. Like Scooby didn't survive the the Shoggoth or something, right? Like
Scooby's gone, man. He's
gone. I mean, you literally are like picking like one of them's like homeless, like they can't adjust to regular life, like something like that. That was a thing I wanted to that was the one last job I wanted to do, was to get them all back together for one more mystery.
So is it Fred, Velma, or Daphne that's running the cult now?
Oh, it's definitely Thelma. She would have known to run a cult. Like
Fred was pretty charismatic.
Yeah, but Fred's not that smart.
That's true.
That's true.
Running a cult is more work than you think it is. That is definitely a job that falls to Velma. Velma definitely is.
Somebody asked, why isn't Buffy Kids on Bikes? Buffy is kind of Kids on Bikes.
But they've got Buffy has support from the adults in her life.
That's true, because Giles
is a through line. Certainly her mom for parts of it.
That's true.
Yep.
There's definitely a support structure from adults.
Is the craft a Kids on Bikes?
Oh man, that's a really good question. Wow, there's some super fringy edge cases here.
Yeah, there's some.
That's right.
What were some of the other edge case we had talked about? I couldn't remember the movie well enough. Was Flight of the Navigator? It feels like it, right? Like
definitely.
I just haven't.
That's the one I threw out when we were at dinner. I'm like, "Is Flight of the Navigator a Kids on Bikes movie?"
Right.
And then you were like, "I was thinking that same thing."
Yep. Flight of the Navigator. The other one that I thought about and wasn't completely convinced was Last Starfighter. Like that. I don't
think that one is.
I don't think so either.
Oh, what's the one with Dabney Coleman as the kid keeps him back?
Cloak and Dagger. Cloak and Dagger, man, that is dark. That is way darker than you remember.
Cloak and Dagger might be a Kids on Bike thing. Like no one believes. Yeah, you don't actually know whether he's real, imaginary, real. Like, yeah, that is actually really dark. Somebody gets like killed or something.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's ask the last question that we have for this conversation.
There's a lot of nostalgia going on here tonight.
GMing and player advice. I mean, it was $3.50. I wanted something that was fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
GMing player advice for this genre. So Phil.
Yeah, my advice if you're running a Kids on Bikes game is that of course your game's going to have fantastic components and cool mysteries, but you should also pay equal time to the parts about being a kid. Like the thing that I had just as much success in my Tales from the Loop game leading up to the winter ball, and was Bob's character going to ask the one of the NPCs out to the ball or not, and all the things that kind of surrounded Tony's character and his family about going to the dance and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I had equally as much enjoyment out of that part as they did the mystery leading up to the winter ball. Like, so relish those moments of getting to be kids and do kid things.
Yeah.
How about you, Camden?
So I think that whether both when you're facilitating and when you're playing, you need to remember that kids don't make smart choices, and it's okay. I mean, most of these stories are predicated on kids making ridiculous decisions that seem logical to them, but with a little distance and a little age and experience, that doesn't. But that's okay. They need to constantly be failing forward and pushing the story and being more ridiculous. It's part of the storytelling of that particular trope.
It's also really important for players to keep that in mind, like poor impulse control.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Like you're a kid, right? Like bad logic and poor impulse control. Go forth.
It's guarded by people with machine guns. I try and sneak in.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's a terrible idea, but yeah, that's exactly what you're supposed to do.
I think I don't want to call anyone out, but I think it was Ange who had a player who was like trying in one of her Tales games. It was like trying to be way too realistic about the game, and was like, "Well, I wouldn't ride my bike there" or something. And it's like, "Well, you're kind of missing the point of this. Like, you're missing the point of this genre." Like, yeah,
absolutely. So, Chris,
the wonder. I mean, I think as far as like constantly tone setting, like. The wonder of the genre is very important. Like if you can't keep that wondrous sense, which is hard to like, tones are always hard to capture. Like how do you capture wonder? I mean, it's really about sort of like instead of being over the top, it's about being a little bit more subtle with how things develop. I would think, as far as like the weird stuff that goes on. Like if you think of war games, like we get a lot of cuts back and forth between the computer and things like that, but part of the wonder of that story is like we don't know what the deal is with the computer for a while. And then we find out like it was named after the professor's son, or the original programmer's son. It is interacting, which is for that period of time like, wow, AI computer, that's bizarre, right? Like that is all very wondrous. The ET thing, like it's an alien, like that. There's instant wonder right there. But as an alien, it doesn't do a lot. It just kind of hangs out, right? Like every once in a while,
gets drunk.
Yeah, but then every once in a while, it does something.
Yeah. And the thing it does is pretty wild. So like the healing of the finger, right? Like that's a pretty wondrous moment.
Yeah.
Like,
because otherwise it's just this kind of weird alien that's hanging out, right?
Yeah.
Like blending in with the stuffed animals.
Yeah.
Like Goonies is all filled with wonder. That whole thing is like, we're a bunch of normal kids that have this real life problem. Like we're about to get kicked out of our houses, which there's a whole lot of people in the world that can identify with that situation. And yet we're going to go on this crazy adventure that we have no business going on.
You find a pirate ship.
I mean, even before that, all the death traps.
Yeah. And the death traps are ridiculous death traps, right? Like, but they're awesome.
Only an insane pirate would figure it out.
Yeah.
Although there was a really good, I was reading up on the tropes and things like that. There was a thing about Goonies, like the Spanish translation on the back of the map rhymes in English and nobody questions it. Like that's bizarre.
That's funny. Yeah, again, sixth grader Phil, not picking that up
until 39-year-old Chris read it. I'm like, I never caught that before. That makes no sense at all.
I have 3 awesome questions from the chat room that are all linked together.
Feel free to ask.
I plucked them out. So the first one is, what part of the genre resonates with you the most? So what is it about kids on bikes that resonates with you?
So I've got an answer. So to me, it's the overlap of noir and My Little Pony. It is friendship is magic, and it's about community building in those relationships. There's a crime or a serious problem that need to be solved, and there's always a tinge of it is at the expense of somebody. Whether that is the expense of a relationship like in ET needs to go home, whether that is constantly worrying about trust and safety and what it means to to have responsibility, like in Adventures in Babysitting, or I mean, there's a lot of different things, but I really like that the overlap of those two things in a really wholesome, often wholesome way.
Jeez, man, I want to make this police procedural game with you. Like, you are speaking all the right, the partners, my god, yes, I'm all over that. How about you, Chris?
I mean, I love fantastical stuff, so like that is the part of those stories that tends to resonate with me the most. I love the idea of like these kids that have no business dealing with the things that they're dealing with them, and then encountering this magical, mystical, over the top stuff that in any kind of like, and usually these films and these stories are set in modern settings, or at least even, well, historical settings now if you're talking about the 70s to the 80s. Adults would usually freak out or flip out, but because they're kids and they have flexible minds, they kind of just accept what's going on, and they roll with the punches. Like, hey, there's an alien, okay, let's protect it. Like,
right,
there's
sure, yeah,
that's ridiculous. But it's wonderful. And I'm like, yeah, I could totally see kids doing that, right? Because kids have terrible ideas and make mistakes all the time. So like that intersection of like kids being able to deal with the strange, wondrous things that are happening.
I think for me, what I love about the genre is that it is the antithesis of so many other role-playing games, right? Like, so many games are, okay, we got to plan how we're going through this door, right? We gotta wait, we can't do that. What if we run out of supplies? Like, what if we run out of oxygen before we get back to homeworld, whatever. Like, Kids on Bikes throws like all of that out the window. Yeah. Kids on Bikes is like, what? Adventure? Let's go, right? Like, somebody's guarding with a machine gun? Like, right. Let's do it, right? Like, it's, as a GM, it's like really fun not to have to overthink. And it's really fun to not have to put that like heavy blanket of reality on everything. That it's just it's lighter, and it's like go kind of thing. And it's a party that at most is going to have like a wrestling match over a disagreement, and not like slit each other's throats because somebody stole like the mystic item out of somebody else's pack or something. Like there's a lighter tone to it that I find refreshing.
So right. Question two.
What about it as a genre? So that was the resonate part. What about it as a genre do you enjoy the most? I feel like we got that part, but what parts of the genre do you dislike?
So
go ahead. Dislike. Chris. What do I dislike? I don't know. I'd have to think of. This is one of those questions that I have to think about for a while, because I mean, when it comes to genre type stuff, like, I don't know if I dislike anything about the genre. I just don't like when the genre is poorly executed, because you can execute it poorly.
Yeah, it's fair.
Like there are ways to tell these stories that don't come off super well, which bother me in a lot of ways. And this is all based. A lot of the stuff is written from the point of view of the 70s to the 80s. So like there are some cringeworthy things that you can kind of see in these stories.
That's question 3.
Yeah,
we'll get to question 3 in a second, which is I think is going to touch on exactly that.
But like dislike wise, I don't really think there's much bad about it. Like, I can't think of anything storytelling wise. Like, these are games and stories that I would watch infinitely and tell infinitely and play infinitely. Like, I think they're really kind of universally good. For me anyway.
I have to say I'm hard pressed with that question to find a thing about this genre that I don't like. I mean, I certainly wouldn't play it all the time, right? Like, it's not a note that I would want to keep playing over and over. But like, I did not have a problem. Like, there wasn't anything when I ran the like 8-month campaign. There wasn't anything about it I didn't enjoy. Like, I really like, and I liked both halves of that. I liked the fantastic parts and the mundane parts like equally well. I guess maybe the thing is there's probably some elements that don't really fit well. Like, if you wanted certain darker elements in your game, like, that's not going to work in a Kids on Bikes game.
Sure, because Stranger Things has got dark elements to it. I mean, there's a kid who's having his autonomy taken away constantly because he's possessed.
You're not wrong.
Like, he has very little choice in that matter.
I will cede that point. I am actually hard pressed to think of something I don't like about this genre.
So I've got something.
Well, let me be clear. Something I don't like about the genre that doesn't have to do with question 3.
Okay.
So you want me to tell you question 3 first, or?
Well, let me jump in, and then you can use it probably to jump into question 3.
You may answer question 3 for us right now. Go ahead.
Right. All right. So because it is such a tropey genre, And even if you look at the character options for Kids on Bikes and Tales from the Loop both, they are looking at very specific tropes, which tend to lead to caricatures of human beings, which
That's fair.
can introduce a whole bunch of problematic content. And so I think because you're looking at these, like overblown simplifications of humanity as the foundation. I think that there's not a lot of time in most of the things that I've read or seen in the genre about really balancing that out and making sure that these are human beings.
Yeah, that's the execution thing, right? Like you cannot execute this stuff well sometimes.
Yeah, but as if you're basing it on, I mean, there's all this source material. Most of that source material puts people into those same.
They do.
So I mean, it really is kind of the genre. It's like, Westerns are the same way. Do all Westerns need to be an oversimplification of these, kind of racist stereotypes about the Old West?
No, they don't.
No,
but they tend to be.
They tend to be because that's what they're based on.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think that's actually really good. I'm trying to jog my memory, but I'm actually just going to go look in the book. I'm trying to remember if there's a little something that helps balance that in Tales from the Loop, because there's some extra parts of the character sheet like that give you some ideas about secrets that you might have that are like a little bit.
Apparently, we said at some point we're going on this crazy adventure, and then only an insane pirate. My bad. I said the insane pirate thing. Again, I might have said the crazy adventure thing too. I can't remember.
Right? So we're gonna say wild adventure. I know, right? It's gonna be a thing. We'll work on it. So let me get to question 3, because question 3 touches on all of that, right? So what are some of the isms and pitfalls of the genre that you think people should look out for? And I will say that the first one is the 70s, 80s aren't an actual awesome time, like socially, like there's a
really do tell.
Yeah, I mean, sexism's a huge problem in both of those in both those time periods. And in fact, actually, it's one of the things in the second season. We were just talking about this before the show. The second season of Stranger Things that I like the least is the boys are kind of mean to I forget her name, the
redhead.
Yeah, the girl that's she's great at the arcade. And
I can't remember any of the names of the characters that show those. So
I know. So I get it because it was the 70s but I don't think we have to play for those
Max.
things. Max, thank you. Yeah, I don't think we have to play for those things.
It was the chat room. Thank you, chat room.
And it was actually a thing that got kind of scrubbed out of my Tales from the Loop game. We just didn't that was just not in the game. I was not going for historical realism, so that you guys have to hate girls or anything. That was not, definitely not the case. So yeah, it's that's definitely that is, I think, part of the problematic content is this time period that it's set in.
If you go back and look at almost anything from the 70s and 80s that you haven't seen in a long time,
it's bad.
It's way more sexist and racist than you probably realize. And even if it was, so if you remember it as being sexist and racist, it's so much worse.
I mean, I just recently seen Goonies not too long ago. It's got a lot of problems.
Yeah. Goonies was one, I was driving here. I was like, oh yeah, Goonies. And then I was like, oh,
by
never.
By the way, this is why so Bob likes to argue about how we don't need to retell stories that we've already told. To me, these are the reasons why we can retell some of these stories, because we can do them better now with more justice than they had before.
Yeah.
I would love to see a newish Goonies movie. I think that would be fun.
I would love to see actually a redone Goonies tale with a much much better casting. Yeah, that would be fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think one of the weird traps is having grown up in the 70s and 80s, right? I don't want to say immune to it. It's that thing where I romanticize the era that I came from because I'm old, and I'm just being nostalgic about it. But it's like you said, when you go back and look at stuff, it's just
yeah.
So I do think for Kids on Bikes, scrubbing out the sexism, the racism, and I'm not one. I don't know. I'm not one who's well, we have to play it like super historic. So like we have to play it super historic. So we're gonna play a lot of sexism in this game.
Play pretend, people.
Yeah. Like, look, this is a, you know, I mean, especially like Tales from the Loop. Like we already have like a particle accelerator under the ground in the middle of Sweden. Like I'm pretty sure we can wipe out all the rest of these things. Like we don't have to, you know, we don't have to have this stuff cropping up in the game.
Also, that game, I mean, it doesn't even have to say this to do this, but it says the 80s that never was. Like, you can do whatever you want with it.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to play into any of those things that actually happened during those periods of time.
I mean, the 80s is also like a terrible, like 70s and 80s are a terrible time for LGBT.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and I say 80s because once the AIDS scare starts, it gets, like, people get super ugly and reactionary. Like, Reagan era, you know, responses to HIV and things like that are unbelievably awful. Things that we like gloss over nowadays, but like terrible things.
Yep.
So yeah.
Yep. I remember, unfortunately.
I mean,
yeah, but I mean, like, ultimately, I think that unless you're, as a human being, your goal is to be as shitty as possible, then why on earth would you go out of your way to argue to be historically accurate in any game of pretend to highlight those things?
Right. Yeah. I'm with you. I'm with you. Like it to me, you're looking for justification for bad behavior.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Like, well, the fun, like it becomes the thing like, well, the fun part about playing this genre is like, I don't have to be as politically correct. So I'm playing as close to historical as I can. Right. Which is really like code word for like, I want to be really shitty.
Yeah.
And I'd like some justification for it.
Well, and that's like saying, well, you know, I'm just playing to the genre or the tropes of the genre when the tropes of the genre are racist or sexist or
right.
hateful or
I'm
whatever.
I'm just playing my character.
Yeah. Nope.
No.
No, just go away.
You're being a terrible human being is what you're doing.
Correct. There's never been a case ever where that defense stands.
Yeah.
So yes, I think we've touched on a number of problematic isms, which I think is really good. Like it's a really good point to bring up that there's this, you know, super romanticized version of this genre, and the reality of the genre is really like bad. Like, but if you want to play it, just take those things out.
Yeah, the storytelling beats are cool, I think, to tell a Kids on Bikes story. But there's like all the problematicness of the time period in which most of the source material that we have arises from.
Mm-hmm.
And it sucks. But like you can just rip all that stuff out.
Yeah.
It's easy enough to do.
Yeah. Diversify your kids' neighborhood. Like it's
yeah. So that's our take on Kids on Bikes. The genre.
Thank you, chat room, for awesome questions.
Thank you, chat room. We hope you got some insight on what makes this genre tick and what to do when you run or play a Kids on Bikes game. And I think that's all the questions we have from the chat room. So we should probably move on to the conversation corner, which is right
there,
right
where we left it.
Yeah. So let's talk about everything else that's kind of going on.
All right.
Whatever.
Look, I was sick, man. There wasn't much.
Chris was down with the sickness, man.
There was a birthday party that I was half alive for, that I tried to be as social as I could after we had a conversation. Like, I was already sick coming out for that, and then I like came back here to people, and then I had to people for like 4 hours,
right? And then go to work.
And then I took a nap.
Oh, that's right. You didn't go to work. That's right.
No, I went to work.
Did you? Oh.
I mean, I took a nap and then I went to work, but it was fine. Like I felt much better the next day. Like, it's a good thing I took the nap. Otherwise, I would have been dead. But nobody wants to talk about that. That's no fun. I play games. Like, aside from Groves, we played this game called Fire in the Library, which is a really fun push your luck game where you're pulling dice out of not pulling dice, you're pulling cubes out of a bag while you're trying to not burn the library down. So like you're pulling cubes out of a bag, but every time you pull a red cube, it's because the library's burning some more. And you're putting them on this card that you have. And the more books that you pull, the more points that you score. But like if you pull too many red cubes, then you burn, and then you burn the books and you don't get any points, and things get worse. And then you put more red cubes in the bag eventually, so there's like more chance to pull fire, so it accelerates. So it's a really fun little push your luck cube pulling game, and it's not antagonistic at all, Camden. So like you might even like it, although you might get frustrated, like, oh, I burnt more books.
No, I'm just not going to play it, so there's no level of frustration.
That's fair. We're just gonna keep doing this. This is just gonna be a running gag. Like, hey, Camden, here's a board game. No,
No.
like that's just the response. Maybe we'll just table the gag and like not even bother anymore.
I mean, we're not. I mean, to be clear, we're not pressuring Camden to play a game.
No,
Camden has plenty of legitimate reasons not to want to play
there's.
board games. I've seen board games played in public.
Oh, it's not a good. It's
I
not
mean,
a good scene
I
at
will
all.
say that I play board games very differently because I don't like competitive board games at all. I actually like cooperative board games because that to me is more fun to actually work with my friends.
No, I like engine building.
No, I know you like all sorts of you
I do.
you like board games.
I don't necessarily like social, sort of like social manipulation lie type games. Those are not ones I like to play a lot.
I have one social manipulation
Well,
game that I
Sheriff
love.
of Nottingham.
Sheriff of Nottingham. That is actually a really fun game. That's a ridiculous social manipulation game.
Other than that, like I didn't do much. I was sick.
Awesome.
I was sick. I was in bed for like 40 hours of like over the course of 3 days. Like
Yep.
I played some Tecmo Super Bowl. I love that game. By the way, I played the 2019 mod for it because they like do the people that like
Oh, they keep updating the stats.
they keep
right?
updating every year. So like I mean I was in bed for like hours, so I'm like, oh, I'm not tired anymore because I've just slept for 20 hours. Like I'm gonna play some Tecmo Super Bowl, and I found the 2019 season and played with the Rams for 16 games. That was fun. Todd Gurley's really good.
I mean, I played Super Tecmo Bowl like all through college, so I have like fond memories of that ridiculous football game. So I can only imagine what loading the 2019 stats in it.
It's very enjoyable.
Yeah.
They've also tweaked the game. Like it's really easy to like kick returning is a lot easier than it used to be.
Kick returning was easy when you had Christian Okoye on your.
That's not fair. He just runs people over.
Yeah.
This has been your sports ball video game moment.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes I wonder why you asked me to show up here. I'm like, I hear words.
That's
No.
okay. There was a conversation earlier where all I heard was like old.
That's
old,
fair.
That was
old,
Camden and I jamming on Buck Rogers.
That's
I've
right.
seen one
Wait,
episode.
wait, I just said Buck Rogers. You watch the chat room blow up in a second.
Buck Rogers.
Yeah. So Chris was down with the sickness.
Yeah. So how
Mhm.
about you, Phil?
So it was my birthday weekend. So Tuesday, like from last Tuesday to today was like a roller coaster ride, right? So Wednesday I had like a total con crash. Like my con crash like caught up with me,
Mhm.
and I was I don't actually think I did anything. I think I just literally stared in front of my computer for like a whole day. I recovered somewhat by Thursday. By Friday, my parents came into town, which was nice. I went out to dinner with them for my birthday, and Saturday I took my dad to go see Captain Marvel. Which Sunday you went to see Captain Marvel. So,
I did.
So that was my second time seeing Captain Marvel. I really liked it. And again, no spoilers, but boy, when you watch it the second time around, the things that come out, like the things that were said and the things that were done, you're like, wow, this is a like the metaphor of this movie is pretty intense, actually.
Mhm.
So, but my dad and I took my son as well. They both loved it. Not surprising, like my dad didn't quite see all of the movie. Like he didn't see all the levels of the movie. Like he got a good part of it. He was like, oh, it was really good, really positive, feminine film, whatever. I'm like, yeah, there's like all this stuff underneath, but we didn't just let it slide. Like it is good. So I did that, which was fun. And then the other thing, I love me a good backpack. I have found my new backpack guru. It's this guy, his name's Chase Reeves. He's originally from Portland, and he is like a little out there. Like he's a little nuts. But he does all these YouTube reviews of backpacks.
So he's the kind of hippie-ish guy.
Do
on YouTube?
you know him?
I've seen some of his videos.
Yeah. That guy's nuts. Like he's kind of nuts, but like
He's what?
I'm sorry. Wow. Sorry. Let me back up. He is a little gonzo.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. He is a little gonzo. He is definitely from Portland. There is no mistaking it. His bag reviews are really good. Like I've watched a bunch of them, and the way he talks about materials, the way he talks about construction, what to look for in a bag, I've actually learned quite a bit. He was actually the reason I went and bought my everyday backpack, despite a bunch of other people also saying great things about it. Watching his review and seeing how he took it apart is really good. So yeah, he's a bit out there, but I have enjoyed him. I've enjoyed him quite a bit.
He has that sort of like deep cut enthusiasm because of how much he loves bags.
That's the Gonzo part of him,
yeah.
right? Yeah, it's a really interesting, and he's progressed over time. Like I've watched earlier ones and later ones, so he's not only now into into like just bags and like everyday carry, but he's into like one bag traveling. So like take one backpack. This is the only thing you take to go traveling for however long you're going to go.
Yeah.
And talks about like kind of minimalizing, you know, all of like what you carry to go on a trip. Super, super interesting.
Yeah.
I'm skeptical that I am too big. Like when I see all these packing cubes and backpacks and I'm like, yes, but like my clothes are much bigger. Like I think he says he's 5'10", like 195. I'm like, my shirts are much bigger than your shirts. Like I don't think my stuff, like I don't think 5 days of my clothes fit in that packing cube.
And especially if you're wearing jeans. I mean, jeans are
so big,
bulky,
man. Yeah. So I do like, so if you are into bags, even a quarter of what I'm into, or you're just curious about a particular bag because he has many reviews, if you just look up Chase Reeves, likely he's gone through the backpack you're looking for.
Awesome.
Yeah, so yeah, it's been fun. That's been like kind of the thing I've been watching in the morning while I'm making breakfast. And you know, he's yelling in the background as I'm cooking. Look at these zippers! Look at these zippers! YKK 10 zippers! You gotta see it.
Yes, I appreciate the enthusiasm.
Yeah. Oh, and Rob wanted me to talk about my new bag company idea.
Oh yeah. Well, hold on. Was that you and me both going like, I hear words. I hear words.
I am a little bit more on the bag side of the world with Phil.
Okay.
So.
Chris, I think I'm supposed to help you pick out a new bag.
Eventually,
right?
you're supposed to help me pick out a backpack.
Yeah, I'm ready.
I need
like
one.
I'm studied up. Yeah, I mentioned on Twitter the other day that I had this like daydream where Rob Donahue and I create a bag company, and all of our bags are named after conventions. So like there's the breakout satchel, right? Just what you need to get around and break out. There's like the Gen Con day pack. That's like a much more rigorous, like you're never going to get back to your hotel. So like pack everything you need.
You've got a hotel by the airport.
Yeah. You got a hotel by the airport. You're going to be on site all day. This backpack's going to carry everything you need, right? Like where your breakout satchel is like, well, your room's upstairs. Like you just need to like bring your stuff down for your game and like grab some lunch on the path or something. Yeah. So anyway, that's my dream. Like if I hit it big, like I'm hiring Rob. We're gonna go make some bags.
Nice.
So anyway, that's enough bag talk. Camden, please change the subject for God's sakes.
All right. So I spent a lot of time, super boring, cleaning my house. So there's still a bunch of boxes left in our living room and things. So going through those and mopping underneath them and exciting stuff like that. I'm ready for spring and some sunshine.
Yeah,
that would
right?
be nice.
That'd be great.
Super, super nice. And like we talked about earlier, I went and saw Captain Marvel with kids this weekend.
I'm sorry, what was your review?
Okay, so are we explicit?
You've been warned.
Okay, people have been warned. So my 4-word review of Captain Marvel. I'm Carol Danvers, motherfucker. That's pretty much all you need to know. There you go. No spoilers. Unless you don't know that Captain Marvel is Carol Danvers, but
it's fair.
But yeah, okay.
Oh man, that movie! I can't wait till we can take the spoiler cap off that movie. There's so much to talk about in that movie.
Yeah, but it was good, and it's been good. Good weekend, and it was nice hanging out with everyone on Sunday and getting a chance to talk and catch up. But that's pretty much it.
Did you like the 90s soundtrack?
I did. Yeah, it was very appropriate.
Yeah. I dug it. I was jamming on some 90s tunes after that. I was like, oh man, I'm gonna just put some Google Play music on. Like, give me some 90s.
Yeah, and I thought very appropriate use of the. I don't want to ruin it, but the song that they played during that final big fight.
Yeah, it's perfect.
It's perfect. Right, no accident.
It is actually the most appropriate music choice that they make in the whole thing. There are a lot of 90s tunes that are just kind of thrown in there because they're 90s tunes. They don't like cohesively create any kind of theme other than it's the 90s.
But
that particular piece of music is wonderful.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. Cool stuff. Do you want to do some patron
let's
shout outs?
do some patron shout outs. Stephen Farrell, the Tabletop Bellhop, T. Caustic, Thomas Bagley, Noah Bond, Austin Lemke, Blaze A. Bear, Chelsea Clark, Dan Simons, David Walker, Donahue McCarthy, Drew Smith, the secret weapon of the show, Evil Rich, Glenn Seiler, and Jason Pitt. Those are our patrons. Thank you so much for this week. Anyway, we have more. There's like 97 of them or something like that.
Yeah, you can't do all of them every week.
Yeah, I can't do all of them every week. Unless you're, gaming and BS, they do all of them every single week, which is crazy. They also do it like super fast.
Do they do it fresh, or do they just have an audio clip they roll?
I'm pretty sure that Sean just has an audio clip that he'll roll.
Yeah. Maybe we could do that if we were just gonna mail it in and not actually say them live. Right. Sure, we could mail it in and just roll a clip.
But then you couldn't hear me like screwing up a name every week.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Where's the fun in
that?
that?
Thank you so much for being our patrons. We greatly appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you everyone so much for listening this
week.
If
you are free on Tuesday evenings, 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern, 6 o'clock p.m. the Queen's time, come join us live on Twitch, where you can chat with the other awesome listeners in the chat room for life and ask us the occasional question. Or in this case, lately, is going to help Phil be better. That seems to be the chat room's job this week, and hopefully not too many weeks after. But thank you, chat room, for all your help today.
And if you cannot make it to the live show to listen and help make us better, check out our podcast each week wherever you get your podcasts. And take a listen to some of the other shows on the Misdirected Mark Network, such as Down with D&D, Bone, Stone, and Obsidian, Pandas Talking Games, Cypher Speak with Darcy and Troy, The Gnome Cast, the Wednesday evening podcast Us All Stars, Zhangu Hustle, She's a Super Geek, and Bonus Experience. You can and should check out our sibling podcasts, Tabletop Bellhop, The Knights of the Night, and the always amazing Gaming and BS.
I love NPR voice.
Then please leave us some feedback. You can reach us directly via email at mmp@misdirectedmark.com. Check out our Facebook group. Hit us up on Twitter. The show, the network, is at Misdirected Mark. He's at Camden. The other guy is at Robert M. Everson. I'm DNA Phil. And of course, our host for the last 7 years, The Light 101.
If you like what we do here and on other shows in the Misdirected Mark Network, you can support our Patreon campaigns. MMP, Down with D&D, and Pandas Talking Games are at patreon.com/MMP. She's a Super Geek is at patreon.com/sassgeek. Zhangu Hustle is at patreon.com/Zhangu Hustle. And last, but certainly not least, Bonus Experience at patreon.com/Bonus Experience. Die mad about it. Patrons of MMP, Down with D&D, and Pandas Talking Games get access to the after show, our pre-production show notes, musical parodies, the Pandas Talking Games bonus outtakes, and a variety of other special releases, including games sometimes from Encoded Designs. This has been an NPR ending of the Misdirected Mark production, Misdirected Mark podcast, which is the media arm of Encoded Designs. Mic drop.
We are leaving shortly. Welcome to the after show.
The after show.
The after show.
What happened?
It's Camden's fault.
Oh, oh
It's
man.
Camden's fault. He started it.
I've been infecting everything.
I want to pledge for a tote bag. That's what I saw
Yes,
in
the
the chat
Misdirected
room.
Mark tote bag.
Oh man.
And coffee mug. And coffee mug if you pledge high enough. And
Absolutely.
coffee mug.
Wow, suddenly easy listening DJs.
Bob, I can never take another night off again forever. See what happens, Bob?
Oh, oh.
That's what happens. Leave us alone to our own devices. I can't do two things at once. I can't watch the chat room and,
Oh my
not say
God.
terrible things. So anyway, yes, at some point we will lift the spoilers off of Captain Marvel and deep dive. Although I will say that if we were to deep dive Captain Marvel, to do it justice, we should invite Senda on the show.
Yeah, totally.
I think Senda could. I think Senda could do way better explaining some of the underpinnings and stuff. Like I think she has a lot of real life experience that tracks pretty hard to some of the themes.
I would just like to put it out there in general. I am always in favor of asking Senda to come and, explain stuff.
Other than the technological trappings of trying to get somebody live onto the show, I'm also.
It's not that hard.
Is it better now? It used to be a lot more difficult.
It used to. Like there are some other tricks that we could utilize that would make it a little easier.
Yeah. So
like having an extra computer that I can just attach to the
yeah, that would
soundboard that we can pump in the person. I mean, my phone works just fine, but it's not. I mean, actually, my phone is actually pretty good at it. So
I like that. What's it called? I like everybody liked the duet workshop. That was good. I dug that. That was good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
It's even better because there's nothing coordinated, right? We're just both yelling. We're just both yelling on the mics.
Yep.
Yes, more women on the show, please. We could fit more women on the show.
more women on the show, more women in the network. I'm okay with all of that.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
Yep.
What do we want to talk about? We got like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean,
ask me a question, chat room. I'll
yeah.
answer.
Yeah.
Hey, chat room. Let's get some questions from
There
the
we
chat
go.
room. Hey, chat room, ask us stuff. This is like an old school thing. Like we used
That's
to be
right.
like, hey, chat room, what's up?
Workshop needs a system of a down treatment. I'm down with that. Yeah.
What's your hidden pain?
Oh man, you know who's
What's your hidden pain? I
My
don't
question.
know. I don't think anybody wants to
what's
know
your
about my
shirt
hidden
about,
pain.
Camden?
My
Oh,
hidden-
Oh, there you go.
okay.
I was gonna do my hidden pain, but go ahead, do yours.
Oh
first.
no. Go ahead. Do
Oh.
your hidden pain.
I don't even know if it's that hidden, but failure, man. Like I'm a freak about failure. I mean, that's why I overplan everything. I hate to fail. I hate to miss anything. I hate to be late. I like that level of anxiety lives with me constantly. It's kept under control by a massive amount of over preparation. There you go.
Makes sense.
You want some hidden pain?
There you go.
Aw, thanks. I didn't mean to be casual about that, but it's, after 2 years of therapy, I'm getting pretty comfortable saying it without having to feel too bad about it. Like, I'm just a giant ball of anxiety that's rigidly managed by a whole bunch of control mechanisms.
Just tell me about your shirt.
Oh, all right. So this is an actual concert T-shirt. It's one of the only ones that I own from Lorde when she played in Denver.
Nice.
I'm a super fan. I think she's one of the most brilliant lyricists out there. But one of the things about that show, which I've written a little bit about, there was these two teenage girls. It was a whole family, but two teenage girls sitting right in front of me at that show. And they were dancing and singing and doing all of the appropriate, teenage superfan things. And Lorde was on stage talking about being a writer. And what she said was, before all the fame and everything, I was a writer. I'm a writer now. And once everybody stops caring about me, I'll still be a writer. And one girl looked at the other one and she said, just like you. And they hugged and they cried.
Aww.
And then they started dancing. It was one of those moments where I was like, holy hell, that is beautiful. And when did I lose that sense of, what makes you a writer is that you write. And where did I lose that sense of belief in the task and the work are enough, regardless of what the rest of the world receives or, what kind of benchmark and rubric that you put to it. So the shirt reminds me of that.
It's really good. I'll tell you what stamps it out is publishing.
That's fair.
Publishing will crush the writer in you because you stop thinking about the wonder of writing and you start thinking about the practicality of making books, and they are two very, very different activities.
Yeah.
That do not overlap well at all.
Yeah. No.
Sorry, I didn't mean to be down on that.
No, don't. That was fantastic.
Publishing is I don't know. Oh, good. Please save us with a better question. Thank you.
Do you have an answer to what your secret pain or your T-shirt?
My secret pain. Well, the T-shirt's obvious, right?
Yeah, that's true.
This is actually from the first original logo.
Yeah,
So
that's old school.
we have the
Destructive
poster in the back. Secret pain. I don't know which one.
I mean,
I never know how to answer these questions without coming off like a total tool. Because this is still a public forum, right? Like it's so hard. Like I don't know. Like for the longest time, I didn't like myself. I do way more these days, but like the whole last 3 years has been super stressful on me and made me question everything about myself. Like I essentially view myself as being a failure. Like I failed at being a writer, game designer type person. Like I couldn't hack it. So then I went and took another custodial job, and it sucks. Like I don't want to do that. Like And I won't for very much longer. Like as soon as I can find something else to do. But like, I don't know. Like, doesn't matter what I've done up to this point. I just still feel like it's not good enough. I never feel like I'm good enough.
I think they, I mean, part of that is, part of that is the industry is terrible about letting you be a game designer and support yourself, right?
Mhm.
Like those are they're almost mutually exclusive, right? Like except for a rare like 5% of game designers, like everyone else, like it's just not, it's not feasible. So it's like super hard, right? Like, I mean, I watched you do it, right? Like,
Yeah.
I watched you do it. It broke my heart, right? Like, it broke my heart to watch you do it because, like, it's a thing I wouldn't do,
Mhm.
right? Like, I was like, I won't do it.
I tried. I failed. It's fine. I'll do something else, and I'll still do some of this.
I think you only failed in that to garner enough work to make a living wage
Mhm.
is next to impossible. I think you created. I think you made things. I think you did things that were successful. I think going to be a solo designer is like it's a like
There's
I don't want to say it's a pipe dream, but it's a super reach.
there's another like super painful thing that's going on, but we can't talk about it yet.
No.
Well, and I'll say that of that 5% that are actually making a living at it,
Mhm.
because I know several of them, they're on a razor's edge
Yeah.
all the time,
Yep.
and almost everybody has stories about losing their homes
Yep.
and things like that too. So
Yeah, there's like I said, there's another thing going on that we just can't talk about yet. We will talk about it in a couple of months probably.
Yeah,
but
probably in a couple months.
It's a poignant question. It's like, hey, what's your secret pain? I'm like, yes,
It is.
I would love to tell
Yes.
you, but
Yeah.
I'm not allowed because of other people.
that's totally fair. So
let's do can we do the positive one?
Yeah, let's
there
do
was-
that.
well, there's a one to me in here
Okay.
that's also positive. So, am I going to try and run a bigger house game than Chris Spivey's 12-player Shadowrun game? No, because I don't hate myself.
That's
So-
a
Why
really good
would you
answer.
run 12-player Shadow?
oh
Run?
yeah, he runs
Does Chris
12 plus.
Does Chris not like himself?
No, he does.
Man.
He enjoys it. He is a superhero on so many levels.
No, I meant Shadowrun.
Oh yeah, see,
12 players in any game is bad. 12 players in Shadowrun literally will run Chessex out of 6-sided dice.
yeah, I know.
Like-
But yeah, he said if he has more than 8, they move it out to the living room so they can kind of space people around. But I think that if everyone was to show up, he's even got a few more players than that 12.
Oh, no.
I ran
No,
a 12-player D&D game once, and then I never did anything like that again. I'm like, no, I'm not running for any more than 5 at this point.
Yeah, I get
ever.
above 5. I get 5 people, and I'm like, well, this table looks really crowded.
I've done 2 12-player games, but I did it with another GM both times. So we split up the table, and that wasn't bad.
That's not terrible if you're going to split tables and have like co-GMs or something like that. But I like, no.
I'll do 7 if I've got an extra character at a con.
That's
But
Yeah.
super hardcore.
That's why I like that.
Fable's Folly used to run 12 players for Deliria. I don't know that game, but like anything that's 8+ players, I'm like, that's hardcore.
That's why Hydro Hackers has 6 playbooks. Sorry, man. We're all done. Like I got this many characters. This is it.
I mean, honestly, my favorite kind of game to run is for 3 or 4, like for a long period of time.
Oh,
Even
me
for a
too.
short period of time.
Me
Like,
too. 3 to 4 is my absolute sweet spot.
so what's giving you hope? I feel like we're the gauntlet at the moment.
It's okay. I feel like it's
What's giving you
it's a-
life? It would be what's giving
it's
you
a bit
life.
of a it's a bit of a gauntlet question.
Mhm.
What is giving me hope? I don't know. I think I can't talk about it completely. I can talk about it in vague terms, but I've got a couple of big life changes that are coming up in the next couple, probably going to come up in the next couple months.
It's weird how we can't just talk about some of this stuff.
No, it's fine.
It's too wide ranging, affecting it. Doesn't just affect us. That's why.
Exactly. But I have a couple of big life changes that are coming up that I think will be really positive. That like there are parts of my life that have been kind of on hold for a couple of years that I'm like big things and small things that I'm really looking forward to that will change, and I'm looking forward to that change. It's gonna be good. It's gonna be healthy. It'll be change. It's not gonna be completely fun, but I am hopeful as those things come down the line.
What's giving you life, Camden?
So
What's giving you hope? Sorry.
yeah, no. I'm always shocked that in the industry in the game tabletop industry, as much as there can be ugliness and fighting and things like that, when you reach out to other people and to ask questions or ask for support, I'm always surprised at how many people are happy to be there. For all of the ugliness and everything else, you reach out to somebody who you might not know well or might be somebody you consider a big name, and more often than not, they're like, "Hell yeah, what can I do? How can I support you? What can and they're happy to share the information that they've learned, and so that always, when those things happen, and it's happened a lot to me recently, it's always super affirming and it makes me feel like, okay, it's not perfect and we're all working hard and we're doing better, and but it really is a community still.
I find the positive and the sad thing about the tabletop games community, especially the role playing side of it, like it is got some problems to it, but there's a lot of good things about it, and it's just so much better than some other places in the world. Like, because I've been a part of those communities too. Like any kind of sports community you go and hang out with, like it's not good. Like fans are assholes, man.
Yeah.
Like bad too, and there's a lot of toxic. Like you think male toxicity is bad around us. Like, oh
yeah.
I think with the exception, I mean, there are always outliers, but game designers often, like, we've all been there at some point. Like everybody's been in the same spot, so like being asked by somebody else, like there is kind of a pay it forward.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
There are definitely people who do that. Yeah, I mean, there are communities without its challenges, right?
Yeah.
But it is, yeah.
One of the things talking to, I don't want to out anybody without their permission. Yeah. So, but talking to some well-known longtime designers, when I've asked for help, they're like, I'm super excited, and nobody ever asks me. Nobody ever asks, my opinion, or asks for my input, or asks if, I'll help them. And I miss that, that's their thing is, I miss it a lot. And it's always great when people do that.
There's also this, there's also this weird thing that happens. There's this weird thing happens where groups of designers come up together. So like within themselves, they're super comfortable asking for help, but they don't always reach outside of the of that ring. Like you can spot them in different places. Like the Forge, kind of like like the old guard of the Forge all came up together, right? So they're like all super tight. There's like little peer groups that pop up, and when you're in your peer group, like it's a lot easier, but when you reach out of it, you feel like some of these groups are untouchable, but they were they were there too at one point, right?
Yeah. I reached out, speaking of which, last week to one of the old Forge people and said, hey, would you help me with an endorsement and some other things? And they're like, yeah, no problem whatsoever. Yeah. And I was like, I can't believe that just happened. So
yep. Absolutely. Yeah, it's it is the part that like makes it still worthwhile. Like there is still that spirit. It's one of the things I love about a large chunk of Metatopia. There's a lot of that. Like, you get people coming together to like excited to help you, like with those things. What's going on in the chat room? I'm only half watching.
We're talking about toxic communities, and somebody
you're talking about like this love fest of game designers.
Somebody talked about esports.
Oof.
And then Dota and Counter-Strike Go. It's really bad.
Oh yeah.
It's very, very bad.
I actually just the other day ran across an article about like how to talk to your kids about like how to talk to your kids who are playing online games about the traps that like extremist groups use to trap kids, like, and talk to them online. And that's the thing. My son plays Fortnite, although I have him clamped off that he's not allowed to play with anyone that isn't on his friends list, or he can't talk to anyone who's not on his friends list. So I've done a pretty good job of isolating him from that chatter, but he also goes on YouTube and
it's that time. It's 10 o'clock. Although I didn't get to say what's giving me hope.
Let's do it. Let's go over by a minute or two.
Yeah, sure.
We can do that.
Let's end it on a high note, right? So honestly, like living here has given given me hope. Moving in with Jen, the life that I have sort of built around myself is one of the most hopeful things in my life. Like living by myself is bad for my mental health. Like being alone is really not good for me at all.
Chris is an extrovert.
I am,
You
and
can't leave him alone.
I don't need to like constantly be talking to people, but I still need somebody around most of the time. There's just something about the energy in a place because of that for me, and it's a much healthier situation. Plus, Jen and Bridget are very, 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 very clean roommates, and it makes me step up my game to be a much, much cleaner human being. Like I wasn't like a disaster or anything like that, but like dusting has never been a thing for me because I'm allergic to it. But now I dust all the time. Like we have like chores and things like that, and it's well balanced. And like this is a wonderful living situation for me. I greatly, greatly appreciate being able to live here.
It's a really nice apartment.
It really is.
Yeah, I like the space.
It is one of the best things about my life. I suppose if I was going to say something else, like the if there's one other thing that's really giving me hope, it's the community surrounding Misdirected Market always does. Like they're just wonderful people that really care about each other, and it makes me feel warm that it was. I mean, now since it's episode 350, right? Like nostalgic feeling, like it is one of the things that I helped make. Like it is not my only my thing anymore. Like there are tons of people that now have helped create this thing and turning it into what it is.
Yeah, I mean, when we started, there wasn't a community.
There wasn't. Like
it's weird.
It was sort of like your idea to put that in place, and then really in the last year and a half, like Senda's made Misdirected Mark so much of a better place. So thanks, Senda, if you're listening.
I think she's been in and out during the evening. Her dad's in town, so she's been in and out of the chat room.
Plus all the other people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I could go on to name them all, but it would take an hour.
You could just kind of roll through the chat room list, right? Like,
yeah, there she is.
There she is.
All right, that's all. I gotta go.
We should go. Chris got to go to work. I gotta go play Minecraft.
Yeah, right.
The after show starts in about an hour.
Maybe I'll see some of you folks in the mumble.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye everyone.
Good night.